across our roads and flooded our streets. But is that supposed to happen? We'll tell you. Plus, what roads will be closed as the state fair begins this week ahead? We'll let you know where not to go. And is there anything on the city council agenda that you'll need to be aware of? Let's find out this week ahead. Now, if you look around your home, and you'll probably find dozens of everyday items near you that have uses that you didn't even think about. Take this to-go cup, for example. This lid is designed to keep the liquid from spilling when we're on the go. Did you know that it's also designed to be a coaster? Yeah, me either. Kind of irrelevant for our conversation today. Mostly just an example that things have purposes that we don't always know about. There's a ton of that innovative, creative, and helpful design everywhere in our world. Even your city streets have design aspects that are so practical and purposeful that they make total sense, but only after you find out about them. One example came to mind this past Friday when we had an absolute beauty of a thunderstorm, over 2 inches in about 90 minutes in some spots. It's a big event. And it's the type of event that makes you think twice when you're driving on some of our city streets. You may have noticed flowing water across places like Central Avenue or high water on 19th Avenue. Looking at those spots, you may think, don't we have storm sewers that are supposed to get rid of all of this? Yes, we do. But here's the twist. Most streets on Friday looked exactly as they're intended to. The purpose of stormwater management is to collect, retain, detain, and remove water from properties, and that happened, regardless of what seemed like flooded streets. On some streets, we still need to beef up some of our stormwater or storm sewer system. 11th by Jim Hill is on that list. But just because you see water up to the curb doesn't mean that the design is failing. It means that it's working. That's the purpose of the design. That was the plan for when we get these rare storm events. It's why we have curbs in the first place, to collect, store, and remove water from the adjacent properties. It's when water is backing up to the properties over the curb when it's actually a problem. That does happen. And our engineers are planning to solve that. Perfect is a very tough threshold to meet. After all, we only have 100 years of data to work with when we're planning for Mother Nature, who has very radical mood swings at times. Our designs aren't always perfect, but they are always purposeful. And for the most part, they're working exactly as they're designed to. In the places they aren't, well, expect a notice of a potential storm sewer improvement project coming your way in the future. So this week ahead, I want to talk about that design, using known data to find creative solutions to both known and unknown problems. So let's unearth how exactly systems like our stormwater management are supposed to work. Joining me now, our Assistant City Engineer, Emily Hiddle. Thanks for taking time for us this morning, and good morning, Emily.
Hi, Derek.
Okay, Emily, I want to talk about how you, as an engineer, figure out exactly what needs to be designed and where. Let's use storm sewers as an example just because it's sort of top of mind. We know that we still have a few areas that need to find a solution. Is there a list, and how do you prioritize when and where you make sewer improvement districts?
Yeah, so there is a citywide stormwater management plan. Our current plan is from, maybe about 8 years ago or so. And in that, we had identified 7 known problem areas within the developed area of Minot. And we've been working on storm sewer districts to address those areas. The 10th Street Storm Sewer District that was recently completed was one of those. If you'll remember, a few years back, there was a storm sewer district, 18th Avenue in the area around Edison Elementary School. So we have a list. We've been working our way through there. Still have a few left on that one, but over time we've also been discovering some more. Our public works department gets calls about problem drainage areas and things that we see when we're out and about. This morning, between the engineering department and the public works department, we had a dozen people out around town, keeping an eye on things, taking photos, collecting documentation, so that in the future, we can make the best decisions on what projects need to be prioritized.
Did we learn anything from Friday's event? Did we find any new spots, or was there anything that was unknown from that? With all of public works and all of engineering out there trying to find those things.
Yeah, I think most of them were locations that were already on our radar. Maybe a couple we saw uh, more extreme conditions than we had thought, so it could maybe shuffle the priorities in the future. Because as we do these storm sewer assessment districts, we can only do them as the funding allows, and our storm sewer assessment districts are paid 50% by the property owners in the assessment district, but 50% of that cost is paid from your stormwater fees. That's a line that you see on your water bill. So that's a pot of money that has to build back up for a couple of years. That's why we're not doing a storm sewer assessment district every year. We just don't have the funds available to fix all the problems that we'd like to.
Yeah, and especially with those special assessments, there are touch points that we have with citizens when we do establish those districts, because we want to give them an opportunity to maybe comment or weigh in, because it is a special assessment. It's very different on how we financially assess those costs. But when we do finally get that district established, let's say we knew of an area that has an issue, but Friday morning it looked worse than it's ever looked, and it's something that jumps on the priority list. So we start that process to getting the district established. What's the timeline for that process? How fast do we start moving towards establishing a district to when it is actually moving water from properties?
Ooh,
Oh, was that a loaded question? Did I get you?
it's a little bit, because an assessment district is a process that's outlined in the Century Code. So we need to go to City Council, and they need to approve the need for the district. We have to pass resolutions to be able to begin the engineering and approve the plans. Then, of course, as with any construction project, there's the bidding process and awarding to a contractor. As we're all well aware, with our short construction seasons, that usually then that'll put a gap in there. By the time the design process, the bidding, construction, they're usually at least 2 years start to finish, even probably pushing into 3 years from the very beginning of the administrative start of the project to design, construction, administrative closeout. A lot of paperwork goes into it, so it is pretty time consuming.
We just wrapped one up last construction season on 10th, right? Did you see any marketable improvements with this event?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I actually drove down 10th Street on my way to work this morning. There was some water along the curb on 10th Street. But then, that intersection at 31st Avenue, you could drive through it easily. There was a lot of water going into the inlets, but definitely drivable, and in much, much better shape than it had been a couple of years ago.
I should say that's 10th and 31st, that area over by Dakota Square Mall, just so people have a kind of a physical reference.
Yep.
Now I want to go to when things are established and they're built to specifications. You told me that we design residential areas to withstand 2 to 10 year events. First, for us normal folk, what does that even mean, and why don't we build them bigger?
Yeah, people are pretty familiar with talking about like that 100-year event or the 1% chance event. That's what we do flood insurance off of. That there's a 1% chance that it's going to happen. But we design in residential neighborhoods for an event that's happening, likely potentially every other year, or that there's a 50% chance of it happening every single year. Basically, we don't need the pipes to be oversized. We could design to collect for these larger events. It would be really costly, and then those pipes would sit there and not be used very often. So particularly in residential neighborhoods, we design just for smaller events. Basically, it keeps that everyday rainfall, collects it and gets it off the roads, so it's not a problem. Then when we get these bigger events, the inlet capacity is not there and the pipe capacity is not there, so you'll see the water starting to pool up along the curb and gutter, and then sometimes it's even spreading out into the road. And for the most part, that's okay, especially on less trafficked roads. The curb and gutter system and the edges of the road can serve as a way to convey that water. And as soon the system will catch up and the water will get drained out, and it's designed that way. When you're talking more of our arterial roadways that are more heavily trafficked, we have some different criteria for that, because we don't want to be having those roadways covered in water. We definitely want to have the crown of the roadways out of the water. So, for example, on a 4-lane road, at least those middle 2 lanes would be out of the water. So you could always make sure you have good traffic flow on those bigger ones. But, it's just something that it's a balance between, always wanting to convey the water, but then also balancing that with, the cost of things, and trying to find a good design level that is a compromise.
It takes a while, and I think I speak for a lot of people. If they've been here for more than 10 years, we've made marketable improvements in some of our storm water management. I think of just by City Hall on 6th, there's that big pump station. That underpass
Yeah.
used to be a disaster anytime we had even a moderate amount of rain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Same with on 16th at that underpass. So we're making a lot of progress. Do you feel, from the data that you mentioned that it's about 8 years old now, do you feel like we're getting closer to the end of a list of things that we really have to get to as far as management of our stormwater system?
I would like to say yes, but as soon as
just say yes. Just say yes.
Well, the reality is, even once you get towards the end of your list, new issues will have popped up. Something that wasn't a problem 10 years ago maybe is a problem now because of some sort of change in the land use or development, or then maybe we're starting to deal with older infrastructure. Maybe we're having some failing pipes somewhere. So we're never going to be done. but I would certainly agree that we've made a lot of strides in the interior storm sewer, on projects that the city has been spearheading, and then of course those projects jointly with the Souris River Joint Board that are part of the flood control, and those stormwater pump stations. All those things together are certainly improving our overall system.
So real quickly, Emily, for the rest of us, I've learned a lot in this position in the 5.5 years I've been here, mostly from you guys and Public Works. But there's a difference between a flooding road and a flooded road, right? Or standing water versus the flowing water. A lot of the times, people get that confused. They think that things aren't working. Can you just give us a quick overview on how our stormwater system, I know it's very big, it's a whole city here, but can you give us a high level of how it's supposed to work for the most part, getting water from our properties to away from us?
Yeah, well, hopefully the way your property is set up, that your house or the building or whatever is elevated a little above the road, the runoff would flow towards the street and into the curbs. The curbs would take it to the nearest inlet. Hopefully, there's one pretty close, but sometimes they're quite a ways away. So, um, the farther you have in between the spacing of those inlets, that's when you start seeing that deeper water collecting on the road because you're collecting it from a larger area. Um, Water will flow into the inlets and then into the pipe network. So then we can get it to a place where it either outlets directly into the river or another coulee. Or if we have, in the case of if there were high water in the river and then the pump stations, would be utilized then. Um, there's also kind of an added issue that we have in a lot of areas in Minot because of North Hill and South Hill. You'll notice a lot of times on the grades on those roadways, the water can get moving so fast that it bypasses inlets. That was a lot of what the problem was years ago at the 6th Street underpass was, water coming from all the way up by Jim Hill. It was just bypassing every inlet along the way because it was moving so quickly through the gutters. It would all get down there to the bottom and pool and flood. So, there's different design things you can do to try to capture more water, but the hills do add an additional challenge.
Is there anything else we should know about stormwater management? The purpose of the way we design things, what we've learned in our, your profession. You have a lot of data that you crunch, and you learn things about design. Is there anything else you'd like to add for us, Emily?
Yeah, maybe just a couple things. A lot of people, like you mentioned before, kind of you see water and you're going to call that flooding, which it is. But some of it is partially by design. We're wanting to make sure that there's not damage to personal property, and then of course, life, health, and safety is critical. That's the number one thing. But then we also, don't want any private property damage. If we just have some water in the roadways, it's a nuisance. But for the most part, if it's not causing damage or is not a safety concern, then likely that's an okay situation. Of course, we can have times where there's too much water in the roadway, and we could have, issues with cars stalling and things. So, we just always want people to keep in mind, if you're ever in doubt, if you're ever unsure, turn around. That's much easier, especially if it's in a location where you can't see the crown of the road. If you can't see, if there's water on the edges, if the middle of the road is sticking out, if you can see the crown, that's a better scenario. If you can't see any of the roadway, we would really recommend that you find an alternative route. It's certainly better to be safe than sorry.
All right. Thank you very much, Emily. I appreciate you taking time. Thanks for designing roads that can get rid of water for the most part. And if there's any other issues that you guys see that we need to know, you let me know. We'll chat again. How about that?
We'll let you know.
All right. Thanks so much, Emily. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
All right. That's Emily Hiddle, Assistant City Engineer. I appreciate her taking time for us this morning. I'm glad this topic came up because it's not something that we've really actually touched on before. And also, I'm also just glad we got some rain around here. Okay, coming up this week ahead, roads will actually start opening up before the North Dakota State Fair begins this week. You can already see some of the traffic control being removed on places like South Broadway. On 27th Street in Burdick, for example, we will be removing traffic control by the end of day on Wednesday, the 21st of July, if not before then. Maintenance work downtown, which is fixing some of the trouble concrete panels at crosswalks, will be tying up by Wednesday as well. And the closure on 6th and 11th over by Jim Hill, that will be opened up early to late next week as well. Let's just say Wednesday, just for the sake of consistency. Moral of the traffic story is projects will start to geared down for Minot's midsummer festivities at the fairgrounds. But expect things to pick back up in about 14 days or so. Of course, you can find all the rest of the lane and road closures by using our map. Go to that website right there at minotnd.org/road closures. If you want to know what other projects are coming up this week ahead and this season ahead, we have a map for that one as well, minotnd.org/projects. I know we have chip seal projects coming up later in this week. Of course, don't forget a big disruption for Burdick will happen after the state fair, where we do a mill and overlay project for a large stretch of that over by the hospital. That will be something you're going to want to stay tuned to as well, but we'll get to that in another week or so. All right, coming up this week ahead, City Council will meet for their second regular scheduled meeting on Monday evening. The agenda is pretty light, so there's not much to preview, with only one actual action item, which is a lease for the city's Carnegie Center. If you didn't know, the city is the proprietor of that Carnegie Center, which is downtown. It's an old public library, kind of a cool historic building, which we've done some work, and now we might have a new tenant. It's the agenda item to recommend leasing the property to the Minot Area Council of the Arts. Get details. You can check the agenda now at minotnd.org/agenda center. If you have any kind of thoughts on the matter, or any matter on the agenda for that matter, you can always send your comments to council directly at minotnd.org/public comments. Or, of course, you can join us at the meeting on Monday at 5:30 to speak your piece. Another event coming up this week ahead is your chance to see what your next city hall may look like. An open house at the current city hall. So not the new one. The current one is where the location is, but it will help you see what's happening at the new city hall. That's happening on Thursday, July 22nd. It'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. The architect for the project will have renderings laid out and proposed actual layouts for the new building available. They'll have discussions on the reason for some of the decisions being recommended currently. You'll get to see what that space may look like, the public space that will be implemented with the new city hall. If you're curious on what that property will look like, Thursday is your first chance to go ahead and get a quick sneak peek. All right, that'll do it for me on This Week Ahead. Thanks for joining me. I have some questions from you guys that I want to get to next week. So if you have any more of those, please send those to me. That you can find online at minotnd.org/mailbag. Send them directly to me. I'll answer a few of those on next week's episode. Of course, don't get caught out of the loop. Sign up for our newsletters, including this one. That's at minotnd.org/the latest. And follow us on social media everywhere that you are. We're going to, of course, try to be at City of Minot. Thank you for joining me on your Sunday, and enjoy yourself this coming week ahead.